by Lake Kennedy, so, yeah. Say hi, Donnie.
We'll give you 2 minutes introduction.
We'll ask Dottie to come
Then
back
they'll
at a future
ask each
time
of you
when we're not doing our
questions, and then they'll
candidates,
give
and
you-
she'll have
well, you
time
get a
probably
2-minute
early part of
introduction.
next year possibly.
Then they'll ask you questions.
Okay.
And you respond
Anyway.
to those. And then you have time for rebuttal, and they'll give you one.
For those of
But
you
you'll
who
explain all
who
that.
have heard that our former mayor, Ronald Kempe, was in the hospital, I have the pleasure to announce, I'm glad to announce tonight that Arnie's good. He actually had a cardiac cath today at our Cape Coral Hospital, and expect to have him home tomorrow. So Arnie's doing fine, folks. They found nothing wrong. His coronaries are great. I wonder how many of us can say our coronaries are great because we don't know. Anyway, I also see that we have a camera back there from one of the news stations. What new? No?
No, actually, it's with my campaign. I'm Jeff George.
Oh, hi, Jeff. I'm sorry. Jeff George brought in his own camera and cameraman. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Glad to have you here. You'll be introduced in a little bit. Also, I have a little bit of civic business that I have to do tonight before we get into the rest of the stuff. Per our bylaws, in September of an election year, which is even years for civic, not for Cape Coral City elections, but for civic, it's only in even years in November. We must name a nominating committee for the purpose of providing members with a slate of candidates for the various civic positions on our board of directors. Nominating committee members cannot run for office. Nominating committee members cannot run for office. As you know, I'm the vice president of Civic, but I'm also the acting president. One of the duties of the president is to appoint one member to the nominating committee who serves as the chairperson. My appointee happens to be Tom Clark. Tom, would you please stand up and say hi to everybody? Tom will be the chairperson of the nominating committee, and in November he will run the civic elections. The board also names a person to the nominating committee, and that person from the board that has been selected is Bonnie Tomicelli. Bonnie is not here tonight, but her husband Nick, who's already on the board, is here. So, to make it easy, and this is only for civic members, I need a volunteer who will volunteer to be on the nominating committee with the other two people already mentioned. And that person could not possibly run for any office in civic. And what you're going to be doing is trying to get other civic members to run for civic office. So, do we have a volunteer who could possibly do that for next month? And all we need is somebody to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll work with the nominating committee and make some phone calls and see who we can get to run for the civic board. I'm looking for a volunteer.
Oh, come on, it's easy. Step up. I'll try.
It's got to be when? After October the 10th. Tell everybody what your name is. Freddie Palamidi. Thank you, Freddie. So Tom and Nick, there's your third member to the nominating committee. And make sure Tom gets your phone number. Do you have email? Do you have an email?
No.
Okay. We need your phone number. Okay. See, that was easy. So in October, what this nominating committee will do is present to the civic membership a slate of candidates who will be running for the various positions on the civic board. That includes president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and there are several trustee positions. I think we have a minimum of 5. So those are the positions that we are looking to fill. Okay? All straight? Good. That was easy. And look at that, Alex, I'm right on time. At this time, we'll get on with our program for tonight. And I'm glad that Jeff was here. I believe Jeff had called.
Yes.
Did you make the phone call?
Yes.
To let us know that you're going to run late? Well, Jeff is here, so we don't have to worry about stalling or delaying for Jeff's arrival. Okay, I will now ask former City Council member Alex LaPera to come up and do the duties as our forum moderator for this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, before I go there. We also have a person running for mosquito control. His name is Mike Ellis. Mike can pull some literature as well. Okay, now I'll get on to asking former council member Alex LaPera to come up and do the duties of the forum moderator tonight. At this time, do you want the members running for U.S. the congressional seat to come on up? Well, why don't you ask them to come on up?
Go ahead, bring the camera closer.
Thank you.
Come on down. First of all, I want to personally say good evening to everybody. Thank you for coming out. It's not the 300 crowd that we had last month, but it did rain a little bit, and I know how that keeps people in Florida home. I am very proud to once again be the moderator. Nobody shot me after last month, so they asked me back. I sometimes feel like I'm that person that gets to pull the thing and the guillotine drops on people. Asking the questions is not nice. Tonight, we are going to begin with the candidates for the 14th District Congressional seat. It is the seat that Connie Mack holds right now. And Connie Mack sent his regrets about not being able to attend, saying that he is in Washington working. As I understand it, he hasn't been attending forums, but we are very, very happy to have the other candidates here, and we thank you for running for the seat for sure. We have Jeff George, who is running no party affiliation on the end here. We have Robert Neild, who is a Democrat seated in the middle, and Bert Saunders, who is running no party affiliation on the other end. Welcome to all three of you. We're going to give you each a 2-minute introduction. We have a timer sitting in the front row there who will let you know when you are getting close to your time being up and when your time is up. Please be respectful to my timer. In your 2-minute intro, we would like you to include the major reasons why you are running for the seat and to tell us in what way you are more qualified than any of your opponents to sit in this seat. Okay, we will begin with the other end. We'll start with Bert Saunders. And please do stand so that the people can see your handsome faces. Working?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here in Cape Coral. I got my political start in Cape Coral here at Super Salad Sunday 10 years ago, so it's a lot of fun to be back. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come listen to the candidates. This is very important stuff. You can find out all about my campaign at bertsaunders.com, or my campaign team over there will provide literature and signs and all sorts of things. I want to tell you a little story. There's a congressman over on the east coast of Florida named Wexler. Now, Wexler was written up in the newspaper and was on the Bill O'Reilly show because he actually lives in Missouri. He uses his mother's address in Palm Beach as his home address, but he lives in Missouri. He got caught doing that, and he really got beaten up badly, and he should have been. Now, I want to extend that story a little bit to talk about our current congressman, Connie Mack. He lives in Southern California. Everyone in this room knows it. And I want to tell you, that's an outrage. People who represent people need to live in the community. They need to be with the people they represent, not out in California. So that's the first outrage of tonight. I'm going to tell you a second outrage, and that second outrage is Connie Mack will not come to any forum to talk to you. He doesn't care what you have to say. He doesn't care what you think about the issues. He needs to be here if he wants to represent you. That is an outrage, and it shouldn't continue. Now, I will tell you that the incumbent says that he doesn't have any real opposition. I've been endorsed by all the firefighters, all the police officers, all the school teachers, all the nurses, and all the realtors. Those are real people. Those are people that are doing the job of keeping us safe, keeping our homes safe, keeping our children safe, keeping our kids safe. They all endorse me. I have worked for 10 years in this community to earn your support. And I think that I've shown you that I will be here. I will answer your questions. If you call me up, if I'm a member of Congress, you're going to get a phone call back. I'm here to ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Robert Neal, the Democratic candidate, 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Robert Neal. I'm a candidate for United States House of Representatives in Florida's 14th Congressional District, and I'm the Democrat in this one. That sounds like we have some other Democrats. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. You know, folks, we got a lot of issues that are beating us to death in this country. We have what will soon be a $10 trillion deficit. It used to be $9 trillion, but now all of a sudden you and I have to bail out the banks and the mortgage brokerages. But you know what? The American people deserve and demand a safe banking system, and I can't see any way that we can keep it safe unless we agree to shoulder the burden for a period of time. But that has to come with some concessions on the part of the industry. They must agree to be re-regulated. They have been so deregulated that the act of deregulation has caused a greed and lust for money like never seen before in this country. And we must re-regulate the industry in order to begin to solve the problems of deficit that we have here in the United States. We must also end this senseless war in Iraq that's consuming valuable resources out of our economy. We must also look towards providing health care for all of our citizens. And we must make sure that we are the most highly educated country on the face of the planet. That has what has been our shining star for years and years and years, since the turn of the 19th century, when it turned from, well, I guess that'd be the 20th century, from 1800 to 1900 is the 20th century. Since the turn of the 20th century, we have led in industry and education, and we need to continue to do that, which means we must invest in that infrastructure that we call education. You know, infrastructure is a wonderful thing. It's roads and bridges, fire and police, but it's also education and health care. So we need to invest in infrastructure to the benefit of our citizens. I'm looking forward to meeting you tonight. Thank you for listening.
Next, we have on this end, no party affiliate, Jeff George.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for having me here. My name is Jeff George, and I'm running with no party affiliation. On the drive up here, I was feeling a little bit nostalgic. I grew up here in the Fort Myers, Cape Coral area. We moved here when I was 9 years old, and I remember my grandfather, when we lived in Fort Myers, used to love to come out for drives in Cape Coral. This was back in the early 70s. And I was just thinking about all of those great statues, or great pictures I have of me in front of the mermaid statue that used to be out here off of Cape Coral Parkway, pictures of me in front of Big John. And I was thinking how much this area has changed. We have seen the cycle of explosive growth here in Cape Coral, I think like nobody else in Southwest Florida. And we're also seeing the devastating effects of the breakdown in the economic system that we're having now. Now, every candidate who's running against an incumbent is going to come up here and they're going to tell you that we are the candidate of change, that we're going to do things differently. But when I look around at the people in Washington, when I look around at the people involved in politics, I have to ask myself, who is actually representing the people that I talk to, that I work with, that I deal with every day here in Southwest Florida? Who's representing the retirees? Who's representing the people that work at the restaurants, the garages? Who's representing the people that work at the mall? And when I look at Connie Mack, I can tell you for sure that that's not the guy. What we're doing with our campaign is something a little bit different. in order to actually bring about real effective change, government has to be transparent and accountable to the people. And so we're using the new media. We're using the internet and video technology that's out now in a way that's never been done before. What we're doing is we are recording everything that I say and do for the sake of this campaign, including this evening tonight, which you can check out at jeffgeorgeforcongress.com. And we want to get you as interactively involved in the process as possible. And what we're doing here on the campaign trail is going to continue in Washington as well. I look forward to talking with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who says we don't have viable candidates here? Question number 1 will be directed to you, Mr. George, and the others will also get 1 full minute to answer the question. But this one is to you first. And we've already had reference to this. Will you vote to balance the federal budget, which is approximately $10 trillion right now, and how do you plan to pay down the debt?
That's the $10 trillion question right now, no doubt about it. One of the things that I'm very concerned about with right now is we're talking about currently we're talking about the largest intervention in private banking since the Depression. We're talking about, at a minimum, $700 billion, and we're going to add that to an already existing $9.7 billion deficit. Now, if we're going to talk about bailing out the banks, there's a lot of things that we have to look at. One of the first things that we have to look at, first and foremost, is who's going to pay for it, and how is this addition to the deficit going to affect everything. We're going to see an increase in interest rates, no doubt about it. We're going to see a stagnation in the market, and we're going to see a weakening dollar. All of that is going to add to the pressure that we already have on the market. All of that is going to add to the pressures that we already have on the market. So the bottom line is we have to ask, how are we going to pay for it? And I don't think capital gains cuts are the answer. I don't think that I have any more time. Thanks.
1 minute they can't.
Mr. Neal? You're the one who made reference to it, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be clairvoyant there. I prepare income tax for a living, and I can tell you this: you can't raise taxes enough to pay off that deficit. It just can't happen. There's only 2 ways to reduce a deficit. One is to reduce spending, the other is to increase taxes. Now, I do propose a tax increase. Under the Bush administration, dividends paid by domestic corporations owned by shareholders for a period of time were called qualified dividends, and they were subject to preferential tax treatment, specifically 15% or less. Folks, that ain't fair. We have to change the qualified dividends rules and allow some qualified dividends so that middle-class folks can still enjoy the preferential tax treatment, but those that have literally billions of dividends, like Warren Buffett, $60 billion in net worth, 5% is $3 billion, he needs to pay regular income tax rates on most of his. That'll increase the revenues. To decrease the spending, I want to stop the war in Iraq, have a strategic and concentrated effort in the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Mr. Saunders, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. The deficit is going to rise to $11.6 trillion. That's about $40,000 per individual in this country. The annual budget deficit is about $500 billion a year. The only way to get control of the annual deficit is to reduce spending. I would support a line item veto to eliminate the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent on earmarks, such as the $300 million bridge to nowhere in Alaska. That will be a significant start. I do not believe we should be raising taxes, especially at a time when the economy is where it is, on the brink of recession. We do need to have sound fiscal policy. I think the bailouts of some of these corporations is outrageous. For example, Bear Stearns, the bailout of that company made no sense at all. I think that we do have to be very strategic on how we deal with AIG and some of those other corporations where their tentacles are very broad. But unfortunately, Congress is being controlled by special interests that are more interested in their own self-interest than they are in the business of the American people.
Thank you. Second question goes to Robert Neal. These questions, by the way, were put together by the board of directors of the Civic Association and given to me. Your question, Mr. Neal, illegal immigration, and you will each have the minute following to answer. Illegal immigration has been tied to terrorism in our country. What are your thoughts on this statement? How would you abate the problem of illegal immigration?
Well, to my good fortune, I think illegal immigration has calmed quite a bit in the last 2 years. Since our economy has turned down, the workers who were here illegally to work have kind of gone. So that's a good thing for us. Now we can get a better handle on it. But first, we need to be able to identify our American citizens. We really have an identification process. It's called a passport, but we need to issue one to everyone beginning at birth. And there's sometimes you'll have to show your passport, like when you get a job. That tells your employer you're eligible to work in the United States of America. When you have a child that's born, that tells everyone that I'm an American citizen and my child is an American citizen. Those are times when you buy a weapon, you should show your passport, and that will identify us as American citizens. Now we can start to see who's not, and those that are not, who would cause harm to us, those are the ones we need to make sure do not cross our borders.
Mr. Saunders?
There are several aspects of the immigration problem that are very critical. First of all, we need to make sure that the border with Mexico is closed. That is something that should be fairly easy to accomplish. The second thing, and if we're talking about terrorism, 9 out of the 11 September 11th terrorists came to this country illegally with visas. They overstayed their visas. The federal government has no way of tracking when someone comes to this country when they leave. So therefore, they have no way of knowing if these people are here illegally or not. So we need to attack that part of the problem, which quite frankly, from a terrorism standpoint, is much more significant than the issue of illegals crossing the border from Mexico. So there's those two aspects of the problem. I don't think the illegal immigration problem has calmed down a whole lot. I think a lot of the hard-working folks may have left, but we still have gangbangers. We have still people here that are have grow houses that are preying on society. Those folks need to be rounded up and deported immediately.
Mr. George?
I think the bottom line with immigration is that we need more effective laws, not building up more walls. The problem that we have with immigration is twofold. First, we have a problem with people actually coming in this country illegally, or more to the point, people who come in this country legally and then overstay their welcome. And secondly, we have an illegal employment problem. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of methods to, number one, help law enforcement secure the border, and number two, to make sure that employers aren't hiring anybody illegally, either without their knowledge or with their knowledge. I don't think we have to go so far as to issue a national ID card at birth, but I think that this is an important step to take. As far as the issue of terrorism goes, this is always going to be a problem. No matter terrorists can come to this country legally or illegally. What we have to do is we really have to make sure that law enforcement has the tools that they need to go after the terrorists themselves, not single out immigrants legally or illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question goes to Bert Saunders. Because you've been in office in Tallahassee and history teaches us about the future, we would like to know what piece of legislation you originated or sponsored on the state level of which you are most proud. Then the others can comment on that legislation, good, bad, why, etc.
I think I'll focus on two areas. First, the environment. I did all the legislation that has led to the federal-state partnership to restore the Everglades. That's an $11 billion project. We're supposed to get $5.5 billion from our federal partners to do that. Another piece of important legislation that I worked very closely with my good friend Ray Judah on deals with the northern Everglades. This is legislation that in the long run will clean up Lake Okeechobee and will clean up the Caloosahatchee River. Those two pieces of legislation will have dramatic impacts on improving the quality of the environment in this area. Healthcare is an area that I've worked on for a number of years. I helped clean up the problems that we experienced with HMOs, health maintenance organizations, that would deny coverage, would deny access to specialists. I made sure that you could see your specialist. I made sure that it's a medical doctor making treatment decisions. I made sure that when you go to a hospital, wherever it is in the world, your HMO covers it if it's an emergency situation. So I think the two proudest areas for me are the environment and healthcare.
Thank you, Mr. George. Would you like to comment on those?
I think Senator Saunders has definitely shown some real leadership on the environmental situation, and we need real leadership in Washington as well. I would like to comment, however, he brings up the issue of health care. I would love to know exactly who all these people are that are getting this great coverage you're talking about, because a sizable percentage of the people I know, including myself, don't have health care insurance. Florida has one of the worst rates for insured individuals in the country. We also have one of the worst rates of education in this country. And I think if we're going to talk about what kind of leadership that we want to see in Washington, particularly in these two areas, what we've seen here in the state of Florida is not the example that we want to set for the rest of the country. And I think we want better standards here in Florida as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Neal.
I applaud Senator Saunders on his work towards health care and the environment, but I have to remind you, notwithstanding the fact that he's running with no party affiliation, he's quoted by the Naples Daily News as saying, "I am a Republican, I have Republican ideals, and if elected, I will govern as a Republican." And I happen to know because it affects me that he voted to repeal the intangible tax. Now, sounds like a tax cut's a good thing, but we got a deficit in Florida too, and that was a perfectly good income stream. We could have raised the exemption on the intangible tax and given people a break, still had the income stream. It would come in real handy right now when we need to educate our children. But no, he voted to repeal it, and now it's gone, and it'd be very difficult to put back. That's no way to close a deficit.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next question, I just noticed that another candidate, incumbent for District 1, Bob Janes, has come in. Hi, Bob. Didn't want you to think we missed you. Okay, the next question. Let's stay on this serious vein here. This one goes to Jeff George. Our country is facing an energy crisis. Big surprise, huh? Some local communities are taking the lead in the use of renewable energy. How will you reward or incentivize us for doing this?
Well, there's no question that we need to shift our focus away from fossil fuels to renewable energies like solar, wind, geothermal. I think one of the important things you talk about incentives, one of the things that's happening right now in Congress is we have yet to see the credit for solar energy be renewed in Congress. That's an $8,000 credit that we're not seeing anything happen. The bottom line is I think right now you have a sizable portion of leadership in Washington that is so focused on making the oil companies as much money as they can by allowing them to drill wherever they want, allowing them to tear up the environment however they want, and then to sell whatever they take off of U.S. territory on the open market. There's no guarantee that any oil that they drill in the Gulf or anywhere else is going to go to us. I think we need to start looking at really focusing on alternative energies and really making sure that the credits and that the incentives for industry are there. Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
Energy needs to kind of be in the public domain. We all need to work together to get this happening. I think we should take the money that they're planning to spend to do offshore drilling and use it to further develop nuclear, to develop further wind energy, to further develop solar energy, and to see if we can't go to some hydrogen-based energy. Those kinds of things are new technologies. What we need is a 1940s style. And don't tell me different. Some of you remember the 1940s style Manhattan Project. It was black at the time, but we don't need to be black now. We need a 1940s-style Manhattan Project for new energy. Let's put our brightest minds to work on this problem to find new solutions to old problems of providing energy for everybody in the United States and the world.
I had the privilege of writing the energy bill for the state of Florida for the Senate this year that the governor signed just a few months ago. That piece of legislation does a couple things. It forces our utility companies to use more wind, more solar, more biomass, more nuclear in the generation of electricity. It's going to take some time before those alternative sources of fuel are on the market at a price that is competitive. But I can tell you, we have a great energy policy for the state of Florida. It's sad that Washington doesn't have an energy policy for the country. You know, they know who's using steroids in national baseball, but they don't know we don't have an energy policy. Hopefully that'll change over the next several weeks as we go forward, but at this point we don't have one. This energy policy that we have for the state will incentivize green technologies moving right here to Florida to help diversify our economy, but to bring those new energy sources to us. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time to get there. We'll get there over the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to see a transformation of this economy and the way we do business, the way we generate energy, that you simply will have a hard time believing.